This is what we call the Atacama humanoid. First of all, I don't know what it is. Every scientist has looked at it and says, oh my God, it looks like an alien.
I just got a report from Chile last night that multiple of these small creatures have been seen live and living in these foothills of the Andes in the Atacama region. We have a phenomenon of something that is a creature not described in the medical literature or not described in the scientific literature anywhere.
It has 10 ribs. No human has ever lived with 10 ribs. It has 4 skull bones rather than the 6 major ones we have. This is 6 inches tall.
The Atacama skeleton was found in this area of Chile. Now, this is an area that the native peoples had reported seeing small people, which they call the Gentiles. It's an interesting term they use for them, for centuries and perhaps millennia.
It may be something prosaic, but I don't believe so. And here's why. If you put up the Lockman report, Dr. Ralph Lockman at Stanford University, who's the '1 expert in the world on skeletal dysplasias, which means skeletal abnormalities and genetic syndromes, we went to Barcelona where this little being is stored. We took exact x-rays that he requested from Stanford. He looked at it and he said, well, first of all, there is no form of dwarfism or genetic defect that explains everything that's seen in this being. It has 10 ribs. No human has ever lived with 10 ribs. What he didn't notice, but I will point it out to you, it has 4 skull bones rather than the 6 major ones we have. It's symmetrical. And the epiphyseal plates, if you look at the x-ray, which is the growth plates. You know when you have, the growth plates in a kid and they hurt their leg? The growth plates and the bone density is that of a 6 to 8-year-old. All right, now call me crazy, but I'm just a doctor. But I can tell you, I've taken care of a lot of children that are 6 and 8-year-olds. I've never seen one 6 inches tall. This is 6 inches, 13 centimeters. What 6 to 8-year-old can live to be only 6 inches tall? Number one. Number two, how did it live? It was found in the driest place on earth, the Atacama Desert in Chile, northern Chile. It is estimated to be in many decades and probably hundreds of years old. There was no neonatal intensive care unit in Chile at that time. There may not be now. And even at the best neonatal intensive care unit in the world today, you could not keep this person, for lack of a better word, alive. So the question becomes, what is it? What you have just heard, I would say a handful of people on Earth know, even in classified projects. It's highly compartmented. This is really way past TS-SCI, top secret special compartmented intelligence. Friends, let me listen carefully. Anyone listening, do not think you're going to be off the radar of the sector of the Intelligence Committee working tasked with this issue. No level of encryption, no level of patents, no level of spy versus spy talking in gibberish code over a phone is going to frustrate their knowing everything you're doing in real time. And the only protection there is strategic protection, which is massive disclosure and public transparency of everything you are doing. The quickest way to get killed doing this stuff is to do it secretively. If you do it in full view, you're completely safe. Why? Because the people who are in these covert programs, the last thing they want to do is be caught red-handed in a wet works operation. Wet works are assassinations. A wet works operation with the whole world watching. That's why I'm still alive. We have to figure out how to move this, or I have to pass this on to a generation because, I won't be around for more than another 30 or 40 years. But we need people to understand what the sciences are, because this is the biggest change in the history of the human race. Every CEO and high-tech person and billionaire I've met with wants to do the technology, monetize it, have patents, keep it secret, do the R&D in secrecy, like you're developing another piece of rubbish like this cell phone. This is junk. It's of no real significance at all. Not going to change the world. It's a telephone that you can talk on like in the early 1900s, except it's wireless using the same frequencies of a radio or what have you. It's nothing. It's nothing. Trillions of dollars into nothing. So the paradigm of doing this as a intellectual property and secret, the only way you're going to get that out is if you convince this other hardcore element within the intelligence community and corporate world that they should give up thousands of trillions of dollars of asset-based utilities and coal and oil so that this happens, and they don't want to do that. And believe me, Bill Gates can't take on this multi-trillion-dollar element. Bill Gates has no money at all compared to these guys. What can take them on? The masses of people knowing about it. The lab doing it is live streamed on the internet. It's done fully open source. And the instant you hit the sweet spot in the resonant frequencies of a free energy device, the entire world knows it, and dozens of academic centers reproduce it in real time. You squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube so hard and so fast, no one can put it back in, and the whole world knows about it at each step. Do you want to know how ETs make things? Should we get into that? Because this is actually a consciousness-assisted technology. This microphone and all this stuff has been, we cut down a tree for this. The metal was dug out of the earth, Neanderthal-like, and smelted down and made into metal. And then it's riveted together in bolts and screws. Transdimensional interstellar civilizations, which means the ones that are here and have exceeded the speed of light, have mastered the sciences of transdimensional manufacturing. To wit, they are able to create a standing resonant sonic energy field that is almost like an architectural blueprint of something, like 3D printing, but this is like 4 or 5D printing. Get it? And in that resonant field, then materialize the object, the spacecraft, the piece of clothing from the transdimensional interface, energetic interface with subatomic space-time matter. What is it?
The DNA was handed off, along with these images, to Stanford and to Dr. Nolan in October of 2012. And then it seems everything fell apart. Now, you can read these for yourself, where he's basically saying that the chances this is a spontaneous chance mutation are infinitesimally small. And we had discussions where he said, essentially, we don't know what this is, but the chances it could be a mutation from just a singular event in a human embryo are infinitesimal. 1 month later, a $3.2 million grant award, the Teal Award, was granted to Nolan and his lab from the Department of Defense. By the time he began to start running the genetic tests and workups, it seems that he had been told by someone to say it was a deformed human. And that's what you will read in the New York Times and on CNN and the BBC that came out in March. What you find is that there is an orchestration of a release of information mixed with disinformation coming from what the CIA official calls the rat pack that's been running scams on the public for decades. It's very worrisome. And it also means that we are going to have to do this through the alternative media.
The interest for secrecy are really fall into
three broad areas. The biggest became the technological and scientific end of this. Once we retrieved, back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, several of these extraterrestrial vehicles and began to study them, we combined that knowledge with knowledge we already had, because remember, we had some people like T. Townsend Brown and the B-Field-Brown effect who were studying anti-gravity quite independent of this issue back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. But when their information got combined with studying these spacecraft, they figured out, oh, this is how they're working. And they realized it's the end of oil. It's the end of the need for coal. It's the end of the combustion engine, the internal combustion engine. It's the end of transmission lines for electricity, because the energy that these spaceships are using, what people call UFOs, we don't call them. No one in the business calls them UFOs. They are not unidentified and they don't fly. These objects are extracting energy from the fabric of space, okay, around, not outer space, but the fabric of space. And in fact, even the early Lockheed and Northrop experimental spaceships that we have built, and we're talking 1950s and 60s, were called flux liners because they were pulling energy from the quantum flux field, what's called the quantum flux field that's in the space in this room. And every cubic centimeter of space, for example, in this room has enough energy to run the Earth for a day. It's a huge amount of energy. And so once this was really figured out by the mid-50s, long time ago, they knew that this would be the end of the oil cartels and the international financial petrodollar system, and a huge amount of the industrialists would then have to change their whole way of operating. In America, we have a saying, if you wear rose-colored glasses, you see everything in the world is rose-colored. But if you're wearing glasses that are conflict-colored, colored with a sort of paranoid, militaristic view of the world, you're going to view these visitors as a threat, and you're going to respond to them as a threat, even though there's no evidence that they're a threat. I want to be very clear on this. There's no objective evidence that anyone has been harmed by these visitors, and there's certainly no evidence that they're a threat to us. There's a lot of evidence, however, that they're concerned about our threat to the peace and the order of space. Why? Because our technological capabilities and our weapons have surpassed our social and spiritual development, clearly. And we are at that stage in the evolution of a global civilization where our science and technology has gotten way out there, but our social and spiritual is lagging. And this is that danger zone. And Earth is in this danger zone now. And they know this. These visitors from other civilizations, other planets know this. So, unfortunately, I think that they have had a great concern about our nuclear facilities. We know this. We have colonels and lieutenant colonels who are Strategic Air Command and the Atomic Energy Commission who have testified at disclosureproject.org that every single one of our nuclear weapons storage areas have been visited by these ET spacecraft because they were obviously concerned. And in the Soviet Union also, and in Russia. We have spoken to people with the KGB and with their space command. And so it's clear that they have that concern, but that doesn't mean that they're hostile towards Earth. I think they're concerned about human hostility. Remember, this is not particularly good news for you. It's good news for humanity and for the Earth and for the environment. But there's only a few hundred people and corporations who really control the world economy. And this information would change forever their grip on that power. Now, they would still have a lot of money, but it's not about money. You and I think of money, can I afford to put my son or daughter to college, or buy a home, or what have you. They're viewing it as power, the geopolitical control. So it's a power issue. And this would change geopolitics forever.